Hello and welcome to Restore 2023. We are reading today from the book of Job, chapters 1 and 2. The book of Job deals with a question: why do the people who are righteous suffer? And how can the believer remain convinced that God is just when he or she recognizes that those who worship the Lord so often experience calamities? Now, we are going to read some hard things in the coming days. What happened to Job, as we look at him as a blameless worshipper of God that is experiencing series of breaking calamities. We read about his three well-meaning friends who start off by being quiet and want to comfort him, but they end up blaming him for something terrible that he must have done to deserve this suffering. So it's almost like a karma that they kind of expect. But Job refutes them, and in doing that, he points out that is, question of why does God allow injustice in the world? And Elihu breaks the cycle by saying that God has got other purposes with suffering other than to punish. So towards the end, God speaks to Job. Job responds, and his life is restored. And the friends' lives who were rebuking Job, they're rebuked by God. The book is mainly poetry. Very difficult to translate from Hebrew. Not that I'm a Hebrew expert or anything like that, but I've read it in commentaries. But it's full of proverbs, laments, hymns, riddles, curses, and poems. There are 42 chapters. They're constructed by a model of 3 sets. And in today's chapters 1 and 2, we have the prologue. And tomorrow we will see in chapters 3, Job's opening laments. Then from chapters 4 to 28, we have 3 dialogues between Job and his friends. And then we have 3 monologues from Job 29, 31. And then the cycle is broken, as I said earlier, by young Elihu. And then we've got God that is speaking. And then Job finishes with an epilogue in chapter 42. Chapter 1 begins with introducing Job as blameless and upright. That's the first part of this scene. And this is done from the author of the book as well as from God himself. Now, introduction is very swift for the readers, and there's lots that is happening in these opening verses to set the scene for the whole book. The next scene in the first chapter is in heaven, and must have been revealed to the author by God himself, since we're not aware that Job himself ever knew of this. The picture of this Satan in the Bible is consistent, and it's too strange to have been invented, since although evil, he has access to God with angelic sons of gods. Satan obtains permission from God to test God's people and inflicts suffering on them. We see this in the New Testament in Luke and 1 Peter. But here we see Job being subjected to 2 tests. One test is on his possessions and offspring, verses 6 to 22, and the other one is in his own very health. In each test, there are 2 scenes, one in heaven and one on earth. Each scene in heaven includes an accusation by the Satan against Job, and each scene on earth includes an assault by the Satan against Job, and there is a reaction from Job. So Job's initial response to this calamity reflects deep pain, but also unshaken commitment to the Lord's. So faith in God does not mean that we are to face pain with stoic, upper lip, unfeeling response. No. When calamity strikes our lives, we can and we should feel the full extent of the pain. Faith does not deny pain, but rather it takes pain to the Lord. We've got so many Psalms that are full of lament. Psalm 3, 13, 22, 42, 142. And they give us the examples of how godly people express their deep pain to the Lord and chose to trust Him, even though they were full of trouble. Now, in the beginning of chapter 2, God commands the presence of His angels, and God reminds the Satan of Job's continuing integrity, the first opening 3 verses. Satan again sneers, and if Job were made to feel the pain, he could openly curse God. That's what he says in verse 4. But with God's permission, Satan strikes Job with more awful agony, to the point that his wife asks him to act and curse God. And yet, despite all Satan can do, Job does not sin in what he said. In the end of chapter 2, we have the introduction of the 3 friends, which we will look into details in their dialogues in the coming chapters. But let's wait for them tomorrow.